You bought the course. You opened the spreadsheet. You told a friend, this time it's different. 3 weeks later, the tab is still open in your browser. You haven't touched it in 9 days. You tell yourself you're just busy. But the real reason is far stranger than busy. It has almost nothing to do with motivation. It has almost nothing to do with discipline. The thing that kills your side hustle in month one is happening inside your brain before you even open the laptop. And once you see it, you can't unsee it in everything you've ever tried to start. Here's the moment it actually happens. Not the day you quit, the day you start. Think back to it. You felt excited, you felt sure. Your brain was flooded with a chemical called dopamine. And dopamine isn't the reward chemical, even though almost everyone calls it that. Dopamine is the anticipation chemical. It spikes hardest right before a reward, not after it. That's why starting feels incredible and continuing feels like almost nothing at all. So what happens when the reward doesn't show up on schedule? Stanford researcher B.J. Fogg spent decades studying why behaviors actually stick, and his behavior model boils it down to three forces that all have to line up at the same moment: motivation, ability, and a prompt. Most people think they failed because motivation ran out. Fogg's research shows something different. Motivation is supposed to run out. It's not built to last for weeks at a stretch. What's supposed to replace it is a tiny, repeatable action, so small it doesn't need motivation at all. Most side hustles never build that. They run entirely on day one dopamine. And day one dopamine has an expiration date, usually somewhere between 7 and 14 days. Now add a second force working against you, one that has nothing to do with how badly you want this. Psychologist Roy Baumeister spent years researching something called ego depletion. The idea that willpower behaves like a muscle that tires out over a single day of use. You wake up and make decisions: what to wear, what to eat, how to respond to that one email that ruined your morning. By the time you get home from a 9 to 5, your willpower reserve is already drained. And that's exactly the moment you've scheduled your side hustle for. You're not lazy at 7 p.m. You're depleted. The hustle isn't competing with your free time. It's competing with an empty tank every single evening on a loop. Feel that pattern starting to take shape? The excitement fades on a schedule. The willpower runs out on a schedule. And there's a third force, quieter than the other two, that finishes the job completely. Economist Daniel Kahneman, working with Amos Tversky, uncovered something called loss aversion. Losses hurt roughly twice as much as equivalent gains feel good. Now, picture your first month of a side hustle. You spend real hours, you might spend real money, and what comes back? Almost nothing. Maybe one sale, maybe zero. Your brain doesn't log that as early stage of a long project. Your brain logs it as a loss happening in real time. Every single day you check and see no result. Loss aversion doesn't whisper. It screams louder than the original excitement ever did, and it screams every time you open that dashboard and see the same flat line. So here's the full mechanism, stacked together, one force on top of the next. Day one, dopamine convinces you this is the easiest thing you'll ever do. Week 2, willpower is gone by the time you'd actually sit down and work on it. Week 3, the lack of visible reward starts registering as active loss, not as a normal, expected part of building something from nothing. By week 4, the smartest move your brain can make, according to its own internal math, is to stop. Not because you're weak, because your brain ran the numbers and the numbers said retreat. Does that sound familiar? It should. It's not a personal flaw. It's the default setting of a human brain encountering a slow reward in a world built for fast ones. Look at how this plays out across almost every side hustle people attempt. Someone starts freelancing and quits after 2 unanswered pitches, not because freelancing doesn't work, but because 2 rejections registered as 2 losses with no offsetting win. Someone starts a content channel and quits after 8 videos with barely any views, not because the content was bad, but because 8 flat lines in a row outweighed the 1 good comment they got. Someone starts reselling items online and quits after a slow first week. Not because the market dried up, but because a slow week felt like proof instead of like exactly what week 1 of anything looks like. Different hustle, same mechanism, same exit, every time. Here's the twist most people never hear, because it runs against almost everything productivity advice tells you. The side hustles that survive past month one are almost never the ones with the most exciting idea. They're the one engineered around this exact mechanism instead of against it. Fogg's research points to a strange but effective fix. Shrink the task until it's almost embarrassingly small. Not build a business this week, just write one sentence. Not find 10 clients, just send one message. The brain can't talk you out of something that takes 90 seconds. 90 seconds done daily compounds in a way that one heroic Saturday burst never does. Because the small version survives the exact week the big version dies. There's a second fix buried inside the loss aversion research too. If checking for results feels like checking for a loss, the solution isn't more results. It's fewer checks, pointed at a different number entirely. People who track inputs, hours shown up, messages sent, posts made instead of outputs, money earned, followers gained, report far less of that daily loss sting because inputs are entirely within your control and almost always show progress, while outputs lag behind effort by weeks, sometimes months. Measuring the wrong one is like checking a pot of water every 10 seconds and concluding it will never boil, when the only thing that's actually happening is time passing exactly the way it's supposed to. Now here's where this stops being abstract and starts being about you, specifically today. Think about your phone right now. Somewhere in it is a half-finished idea. A domain you bought? A notes app full of plans for something you were going to launch. It isn't sitting there because you don't want it badly enough. It's sitting there because dopamine front-loaded all its excitement into day one, willpower quietly ran out by day 5, and somewhere around week 3, your brain priced the silence as a loss and pulled the plug to protect you from more of it. That's not a character flaw playing out in front of you. That's a 30,000-year-old survival mechanism, built for a world with immediate dangers and immediate rewards, trying to make sense of a slow, modern goal it was never designed to handle in the first place. The strange comfort buried in all of this is that if the failure is mechanical, the fix is mechanical too. You don't need more motivation because motivation was never supposed to carry this. You need a smaller daily action, a different number to track, and enough patience to let dopamine's lie about day one wear off completely, without letting it take your entire project down with it on the way out. There's one more layer to this, and it's the one almost nobody talks about because it doesn't sound like a productivity hack. It sounds like an excuse until you see the research behind it. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi spent his career studying a mental state he called flow, the feeling of being so absorbed in a task that time seems to disappear. Flow has a very specific requirement most side hustlers accidentally skip. The task has to sit right at the edge of your current skill level, not far above it. Too easy. And your brain gets bored and wanders off looking for a bigger hit of dopamine somewhere else. Too hard. And the gap between what you can do and what the task demands gets logged as a threat, not a challenge, which triggers the exact same retreat response loss aversion already has primed and ready to fire. Most people quit a side hustle convinced the task was too hard. Csikszentmihalyi's research suggests something subtler is usually happening. The task wasn't matched to where they actually were, so every session felt like friction instead of progress, and friction repeated daily feels exactly like failure even when it isn't. This explains something strange about month 1 that almost everyone experiences and almost nobody names correctly. It isn't that the work itself is hard. Sending an email isn't hard. Listing an item for sale isn't hard. What's hard is doing it while your brain is simultaneously running 3 negative scripts at once. The dopamine is worn off, so it feels pointless. The willpower is gone, so it feels exhausting. And the lack of results is logging as loss, so it feels dangerous. None of those 3 things are about the actual difficulty of the task. They're about the conditions your brain is doing the task under. Change the conditions, and the exact same task that felt impossible in week 3 can feel almost automatic in month 4. People rarely notice this shift happening to them because by month 4, they've stopped narrating every action as a referendum on whether the whole hustle is worth it. The narrating is what burns the fuel. The doing barely costs anything once the narrating stops. Here's the part that should actually change how you look at every unfinished project sitting in your notes app right now. None of those projects failed because the idea was bad. Most ideas are perfectly fine. They failed because they were run entirely on a fuel source, day one dopamine, that was never going to last past the first couple of weeks, with no backup system in place for what happens after it burns off. That's not a flaw in you, that's a flaw in the plan. And flaws in plans are fixable in a way that flaws in character are not. Picture the version of you a year from now who actually pulled one of these off. Picture them not as someone who finally found enough motivation, more discipline, more willpower than you have right now. Picture them instead as someone who simply built around the mechanism instead of fighting it. Smaller daily tasks that survive low motivation days. Input-based tracking that doesn't manufacture a daily sense of loss. A task difficulty matched closely enough to current skill that the work itself stays just engaging enough to pull you back tomorrow. None of that requires becoming a different person. It only requires knowing what's actually working against you, which until a few minutes ago you didn't. So the next time you feel that rush of starting something new, notice it for exactly what it is. Not proof this time will be different. Just a chemical, doing precisely what it always does and exactly what it did the last time, and the time before that one too. The real answer was that your brain was working perfectly on a problem it was never built to solve. Most people never see the three forces working against them. Now you do. That's the difference between quitting in month 1 and being one of the 10% who don't. If this helped, hit subscribe. Every subscriber gets this channel closer to bringing you deeper breakdowns like this one. See you in the next video.